discussing about reproduction in animals. So reproduction is a process in which organisms produce an own copy of themselves, right? So we also discussed that living organisms have the unique ability of reproducing. So generally there are two different types of reproductions in animals as well as plants or all living organisms. They can be classified into sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. In the sexual reproduction, it requires interaction of two different organisms which are male and female. So once they release the male and female gametes, they fuse together and it forms the zygote, which is the baby. Generally, sexual reproduction is seen in higher plants and animals. There is also a sexual reproduction where there is no requirement of two different organisms, right? So there is no involvement of gamete production. So asexual reproduction is generally the reproduction from a single parent, right? So asexual reproduction is generally seen in algae as well as protozoa. In asexual reproduction, new babies are formed from the parent itself, right? So only one parent is involved. Male and female gametes are absent in asexual, whereas in sexual, male gametes and female gametes from male and female are involved. So coming to the sexual reproduction, the main important thing is gametes are produced from the reproductive parts. Apart from this, every sexually reproducing organism releases the gametes like the male gamete and the female gamete. In case of humans, the female gamete is egg and the male gamete is sperm, which upon fusing they form the zygote. Talking about the male reproductive organs, there are a pair of testes which are bounded in the scrotal sacs. These testes are connected with the sperm ducts, right? And these sperm ducts finally they empty into the penis, right? So generally sperms are produced in this testes where they are carried through the sperm ducts, and from the sperm ducts they will be emptied into the penis. So they will be having several processes involved here which you will learn in your higher classes. And coming to the sperms are nothing but the male cells which are the male gametes of the humans. Generally it has a headpiece, tailpiece and the mitochondria, right? Coming to the female reproductive organs, they generally consist of a uterus, which is a sac-like structure, and two ovaries connected with the oviducts of fallopian tubules. The uterus opens to cervix and then which opens out through vagina. The female gamete in the humans is the egg cell, which is also known as ovum, right? Each ovum is generally released by one of the ovaries every month. So generally in human beings, a single matured egg is released by the ovaries every month. This ovum will be matured and it will be waiting for the fusion with the sperm cell or the male cell, right? So once if it is fertilized, once if the sperm cell meets the ovum, right, then fertilization happens. Even though many sperms reach the ovum, only one sperm will be able to fertilize it. Sperms or male cells generally have the genes X and Y, whereas females they have the genes X and X in the egg cell. In case of in vitro fertilization, in some women the sperm may not be reached till the egg. So in such conditions, the fusion of sperm and the egg will be done in laboratory conditions. So such fertilization is called as in vitro fertilization. Once the sperm and ovum forms the zygote, it is after a few weeks it will be implanted in a mother's womb where it continues to grow. This is in vitro fertilization. Coming to the fertilization in case of animals. See, if the fertilization is happening inside the body, we call it internal fertilization. If it happens outside the body, it is external fertilization. We will see the external fertilization of frog. Frog female generally lays hundreds of eggs, and these hundreds of eggs are protected by a layer of jelly that will be generally floating in the water, right? So upon this layer of eggs, the male frog comes and it will sit and it will release or deposit sperms over them. Once it happens, the sperms swim randomly into the water, and because they'll be having long tails, and they fertilize the eggs. So finally small tiny tadpoles will be formed. So as the fertilization is outside the body of the frog, it is external fertilization. But in humans, fertilization is happening inside the body. Zygote is forming inside the body, which is internal fertilization. Zygote later forms into a ball of cells called embryo. Now this embryo is getting embryo, after development, it produces several body parts, like the hands, legs, eyes, nose, heart, lungs, etc. So the embryo with such developed body parts is known as a fetus, right? So upon implantation, the embryo will be developing, and it will produce it will result in the development of a baby for about 9 months, right? In the 9 months period, a completely developed fetus we can see, right? So this embryo with the developed body parts is known as the fetus. Once the development of fetus completes, childbirth will happen. There are also viviparous and oviparous animals, where viviparous give direct birth to the young ones, whereas oviparous generally they lay eggs, right? So though fertilization happens inside, after the laying of the egg, embryo development happens outside the body. For example, in case of frog you can observe an important characteristic called metamorphosis. Frog, after giving the eggs, right, once they fertilize, they grow into tadpoles. Tadpoles have gills and long tails. But upon the higher developments of the life, slowly the tail disappears and the gills also disappear in the frog. So such drastic changes are called metamorphosis, right? So such metamorphosis you can see in frog. Now coming to the asexual reproduction. So far we discussed about the sexual reproduction. In case of asexual reproduction, only from the parent, involving one parent, you can get the babies. Say for example, in Hydra, new buds form on the cell, right? And these buds develop into a new Hydra, and once they fully developed, it detaches from the parent plant, right? Parent organism. In case of amoeba, you can see first the nucleus is dividing, and the cell is dividing into two new daughter cells. This process where the cell is divided into two new daughters is known as binary fission, where bi is meant for two, fission is the division, right? So these are the types of asexual reproductions where new offsprings are formed from the single parent itself. There is no involvement of male gamete or female gamete or anything like that, right? And there is no formation of zygote, no formation of embryo, and so on. Coming to the story of Dolly the clone. Cloning is the production of an exact copy of a cell or a living part or a complete organism. Dolly was born on July 5th, 1996, and she was created by Ian Wilmot and his colleagues. Right? I hope you understood the video.